One of the strangest, most sort of out of the blue stories for me this week in rugby league was that Richard Marshall is set to leave Halifax. The long-serving Fax coach was informed last Friday that his contract will not be renewed beyond the end of this season. So as a result of that, he's decided to leave the club with immediate effect once he's sorted out his severance package with them. The playing group were informed on Friday evening that player coach Simon Grix has been placed in temporary charge. He actually won his first game in charge, so the playing group have obviously come through this unsettling news pretty well over the weekend. But I'm shocked that Richard Marshall, one of the up and coming coaches in that championship, totally overperformed with a part-time squad and managing to bring through an academy and reserves at Halifax as well to give them some sound footing for the medium to long term as well. Consistently overperforming in that division, you would say, has been allowed to leave.
Yeah, it's one of those where you just don't know what you feel like there's a story behind it that we don't know. So
yeah, I mean, you could assume that maybe they want to lower budgets or move away from some of the things that he's implemented. If finances are maybe an issue in the longer term, which is them cutting a cloth and all of that, so that's one thing you could assume. Or for some reason they just think they can do better, which is the other side of the coin, where they might have to spend more money. I don't get the other side of the coin. So do you think he's going to tip up in Super League, maybe as an assistant coach for the rest of this year?
Yeah, I think that would be a good move for him, and I think there'd be some suitors for him. So it'd be
yeah, he definitely needs to get around that environment to think about what his next steps are going to be. As a coach. Okay.
York have signed halfback Kane Southernwood from Hunslet on an initial 1-month loan deal.
Ryan Briley has rejoined Leigh on a 1-month loan deal from Toronto. The 27-year-old scored 133 tries in 125 games for the Centurions between 2012 and 2016. He's currently 5th on the club's all-time scoring list, which he added to already with his being back in the side at the weekend.
I mean, he definitely showed his best form playing for Leigh, didn't he? He's never been the player that he took that step up to. It was Huddersfield he went to, and he never looked as good, obviously, at that level, other than when he was playing in the.
No, he seems like a player who can excel when he's comfortable.
Yeah.
And he wasn't quite comfortable at Super League level.
No,
but with his national team coach or someone who's been involved with the national team setup, obviously, in Duffy, back at Leigh, maybe long enough time has passed for them to forgive him as well for leaving like he did. I think, he's happy in a team that's not got much pressure on them to be at the top of the table this year with the budget they've got. So, I think he'll enjoy that environment.
Yeah. Doncaster have completed the loan signing of Featherstone Rovers halfback Watson Boas until the end of the 2019 season.
Another story that piqued my interest, Leigh, is Ambitious Development Club. I think I've copy and pasted this from Love Rugby League, so do check out their website if you want the news as the week goes on. But Ambitious Rugby League side Manchester Rangers have withdrawn from their Community League in the Northwest Men's County competitions after their application to join League One was rejected earlier this year. Rangers formed in 2012 and played out of the impressive Manchester Regional Arena, situated as part of the campus at the Etihad Stadium. People might remember the women's grand final was played there last year. Where they played in the North-West Men's League. From the off, their ambition was to reach the professional game, but I've seen these ambitions quashed, despite making an offer to purchase the Hemel Stags licence, which has since been bought by the Ottawa franchise. So obviously, the backers there who wanted to become the sixth, Rochdale, Oldham, Swinton, Salford, 5th semi-professional or professional team in the Greater Manchester region, Wigan as well, of course, is in Greater Manchester technically. Obviously, they've backed out now that doesn't look like a likely goal for them. So it's very interesting to see. What I understand is the volunteers and the group behind supporting the day-to-day life of the Manchester Rangers still exists. We'll be trying to put a club back together on a different sort of footing and time frame and that sort of thing for the future. So they might be back in the Northwest Men's League in a year or so's time. and their junior development stuff that they've already got in the community, that's still running. So obviously that's a positive. But they've not really been able to find what their niche could have been. They tried that League One angle. They also tried to be sort of a development feeder type team for all of the Manchester teams and bring in funding that way, but that was kind of knocked back as well. It feels like they've not had a lot of support from the people around them, be it the Rugby Football League or the other Manchester clubs. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there, because it was quite nice to have a team playing there, that close to where the Super League, the RFL headquarters will be apparently in a few years' time as well.
The obviously the Northwest Men's League is it's a massive step to League One. You missed
bypassed the National League there,
so like a more realistic sort of ambition would probably to try and compete in that league, because that's a really high standard, and then sort of like establish yourself that way. I guess if they're going to do this,
possibly, unless the backers were happy to throw money in, which I think they may well have been to have been a League One standard club. But the congestion of teams in that area, you've already got Oldham in that division, and Swinton and Rochdale are both competing to become part of that division. So it's a shame though, because they were a club that had big ideas, and it looks like now they have to be rethought.
Where we go. Former Huddersfield boss Rick Stone has been appointed as head coach of the Lebanon national team. Stone, 52, is no stranger to international management, having previously been coach of Fiji, leading them to the 2013 World Cup semi-finals.
And finally, Super League Chief Executive Robert Elston has admitted that they are in discussions to introduce a quota restricting the number of overseas teams in the top flight to an initial limit of 3, but insists they will be prepared to admit extra non-British teams if they add value to the competition. He said, "From my point of view, I just need to make sure that all the homework has been done on these clubs. I still think the jury is out on sustainability, intent, logistic capability, impact on the competition's integrity, and the size and impact on the overall cake. That's not to be negative about it. We need to be the opposite and welcoming it, but we need to have our eyes wide open over where it is going to take us. What New York, Ottawa, Toronto have done is create talkability and interest. That's promoted a lot of media attention and attention from fans. I think the immediate thought is, wow, this looks exciting. But what it does do then is prompt a whole load of different difficult questions. Is it sustainable? Is it well intended? Is it going to establish roots? Can it be dealt with logistically? Will it put any bias into the competition? Most fundamentally, does it grow the cake? Does it come with additional fans, sponsors, broadcast revenues? I'm not sure all these questions have been thought through and dealt with, and I think they need to be." So this is more cautious optimism. I would put it as cautious optimism from Robert Elston about the idea of expansion. Some other people think it's him being protectionist and closing ranks, and that may be what he's seen to be his job, as instructed by maybe some of the Super League chairmen who are quite happy in their position that they're in and don't want that threatened by these overseas sides. I've talked a lot about expansion. Let's get your take on the topic of expansion. And we're talking here about international expansion, not expansion within the British Isles.
So I think a lot of what Robert Elston says sounds really sensible. And sort of restrict and welcoming teams from that have got the money and add all this sort of due diligence has been done, and they have, if that's done and everybody's happy, then I think we should look to the future and maybe get them into the into rugby league, and if they're good enough, into Super League. I agree that creating a quota is sensible. I would like us to eventually have at least 16 teams in Super League. I think that to aim for that, and if we had some of those, 3 of those were abroad, that would include Catalans, I guess.
Well, if we're talking 3 of 12, we're talking a quarter of the league, aren't we? So you might make it 4 of 16 and still be a quarter of the league.
But not everybody's going to be able to go away to New York, and that's that's one of those things. You'd watch it on TV, but I think the opportunity to do that once in a while, and just to have a team like that and a brand like that would inevitably bring quality players to it just for the lifestyle. You know, you can imagine if a New York team was in Super League today, people like your Sam Burgesses and your Cameron Smith would probably see out his last year of it. You know, you can imagine those kind of players, and they would be coming and playing in Super League, and you can imagine that being a better product that would be easier for Robert Elston to be able to sell to TV broadcasters and get us a better deal. You know, and that's ultimately that would increase the size of the cake and improve things for everybody. But I also have a sort of and it would be an unpopular view except in this kitchen, but you know, a bit more for a protectionist kind of franchisee kind of system. Yeah. I'm not sort of wedded to promotion and relegation. No, I mean in our sport, which doesn't really doesn't really have the ability to sustain it. So if we're sat questioning sustainability and things like that of new clubs coming in, we're on the other side of that coin. Where is the question of sustainability? I suppose with what exists, we've talked about that a lot. There's different schools of thought, and I am keen to protect the integrity of the product we've got in this country, because that is our bread and butter. That is where we come from, and probably where we will be for some time. But you've got to look at what value some people have added. Like the Catalan Dragons, I think it's unquestionable for me that they've added a diversity and value to the competition. And they have strong average gates of around about 8,500 to 9,500 consistently over 13 seasons now. So, and Robert Elston's been out there, visited them, come back very positive about it. He's been over to Toronto, visited them. They just cracked 9,000 for the first time this weekend. And say what you want to about their strategies or whatever, everyone in that crowd is wearing the Wolfpack merchandise. And what I was looking out for on the TV footage this time around was how many people were wearing the new shirts already. And you saw quite a lot. I mean, there was a lot of people wearing jumpers or coats, or because it's still relatively chilly, I suppose, at this time of the year. But every fucker has a cap. But there was lots of the current shirts, the new shirts as well being worn, and all of that. So clearly it's still hitting the mark with the people there. Highest regular season, so not including playoffs or cup games or anything like that, highest regular season championship attendance, championship in its current guise ever, but highest regular season match attendance for a game outside of Super League, but a normal league match, since Hull and Hull KR were both in the second tier of the competition together in the mid-90s. So we're talking like that's something to be impressed by. And they've continued, haven't they? You know, they've not had crap crowds at any stage, and they're continuing to stay strong. So that Toronto at the moment can answer some of these sustainability and intent questions. New York have put together quite a comprehensive package, I understand, to support their vision, medium term as well as immediate. So I think you've got to be looking at those things and thinking there's something good in what they're putting on the table, as well as Toulouse. You know, there's good things there as well. And when they had that, they took the game to the Rugby Union Stadium and got their best of crowd, and so there's potential there for them. So as long as these clubs keep doing it the right way, everyone has to be positive about it. Yeah. Other than people who want to keep it to ourselves and be able to go home and away every game. I totally understand that mentality, that viewpoint, but wouldn't it be better if our clubs were earning more money so that we could pay our players more money, we could increase the salary cap, we could compete with other sports on that regard, and our product, which is as entertaining as any other, can be more consistently entertaining because we can attract more talent and we can pay more players and that sort of stuff. So it's all about growing the size of the cake, as Robert Elston talked about. It all makes sense to me to be cautious about it, to probe them on these things, but to not knock them back, not dismiss them. The quota aspect, what you might start to... I think what Elston's coming at this angle with is, where's the value for our broadcasters in our domestic markets if
so many of the games are being played outside of our domestic market.
Yeah.
It's if our broadcaster can do deals with other broadcasters like they do with the Catalans broadcaster to bring those games in, or Toronto at the moment are paying Sky to broadcast their games when they're over in this country.